Hello students, the question is describe the gross anatomy of parotid gland and write in brief about its applied anatomy. So this is a long question, okay, usually asked which you are supposed to write about in 30 minutes, okay, in 30 minutes. Okay, I will just try to finish it within 30 minutes, the parotid gland, and very briefly we will talk about its applied anatomy. Now remember that this question may be associated with its histology also, okay. So you should learn the histology of the parotid gland right from the histology textbook, okay, which I am not going to cover here in this. It is only the gross anatomy which I am covering. Okay, in the answer introduction, we can write that the parotid gland is the largest salivary gland, as there are the three salivary gland, that is submandibular, sublingual and parotid. So parotid is the largest among all the three well defined salivary gland. And this secretes the serous saliva, watery saliva, okay. It secretes the serous saliva in comparison to the other glands, sublingual and submandibular, which secretes the mixed type of or the pure mucus type of this saliva, okay. And this saliva from the parotid gland, though it is outside the oral cavity, it goes through the duct that is called as the parotid duct, and it opens in the oral cavity. So the saliva comes to the oral cavity. Let us come to see the location of this gland, where the parotid gland is located. Now this parotid gland is located in the parotid region, and this parotid region is a vase-shaped space. Okay, I have tried to draw a diagram for the parotid region and in the vase-shaped space where this parotid gland is located. This is the location of the parotid gland, and this is the space between the mastoid process. See this? This is the mastoid process. Okay, this is the mastoid process. This is the external acoustic meatus. I am writing in chart, and this is the styloid process, okay. And this is the head of the mandible in the mandibular fossa, head of mandible. This is the zygomatic arch, zygomatic arch. So this is the posterior border of the ramus of the mandible. So this is that area of the parotid region, which you in this diagram will not realize, but the styloid process is located at a deeper level, okay, at a deeper level. Now, as I said that this space is between the mastoid process posteriorly and the ramus of the mandible anteriorly, okay, the posterior border of the ramus of the mandible anteriorly. There is an external acoustic meatus which is located superiorly in this parotid region, and the styloid process is also located medially. Thus, you have got an idea about the parotid region from this dry skull diagram, and in this vase-shaped space the parotid gland is located. I will tell you that parotid gland has no particular shape of its own, and it is filling this parotid region, irregular space, okay, and it takes the shape of the space where it is filled, okay, where it is filled, and it goes right up to the neck, okay, the parotid gland. Now let us come to the borders and surfaces of this parotid gland. First I will talk to you about its borders, and then I will talk about its surfaces. Now it has an apex and a base. It has an apex, a base. Okay, let us see first where is the apex and where is the base. Now here apex is situated lower down. You can just get orientation. This is the mastoid process, external acoustic meatus. This is the tympanic membrane, and this is the zygomatic arch, and this yellowish pinkish structure is the parotid gland, which is quite irregular, and it is filling this parotid space. See this, it is apex of the gland is going right up to the neck. This is the lower margin of the mandible, okay, and this is from zygomatic arch up to the lower margin of mandible. Extending is this masseter muscle, okay, this is the masseter muscle, okay. Then here this is the sternocleidomastoid or sternomastoid muscle, which extend above up to the mastoid process and the lateral half of the superior nuchal line. So this is how the area, parotid area, in which this irregular parotid gland is situated. And I was telling you that it has an apex. So apex is directed downwards towards the neck, and this is the base, and base is in relation to that of the tympanic plate, okay. It is going up to the root of the zygoma or the zygomatic root, okay, and posteriorly touching to that of the mastoid bone. So this is that base, and this is that apex. And then we have seen that it has the three borders and three surfaces, okay, three borders and three surfaces. Now three borders are anterior, posterior and medial, and this anterior, posterior, this is the anterior, from base to the apex is the anterior. Let me show you. This is from base to the apex. This is the anterior border, and this is the from base to the apex posteriorly. This is the posterior. So anterior border and posterior, and this is the base. This is the base. This is the apex. Then where is the medial border? Medial border, if you will cut a section of the parotid gland, okay, deep inside, then you will see that medial border is narrow and deeply situated into the, this is the cross section here, and in cross section, this is the mastoid process, this is the posterior belly of digestive, and this is the sternomastoid. So just I will write sternomastoid. This is the posterior belly of digestive, okay. This is the ramus, okay, this is the ramus, posterior margin of the ramus, and on this ramus of the mandible, there are the attachment externally of this muscle, which we have seen. It is the masseter muscle which is attached externally. So it is the masseter muscle, and then here it is deep inside is the medial pterygoid, and another muscle, medial pterygoid, just I have written in chart. So this margin, okay, in a cross section only you can realize which is deeply situated is that of the medial border, okay. So this is the anterior border, this is the posterior, anterior border, posterior border, and deep inside is medial border, which we cannot see from the surface, which way. So these are the three border, anterior, posterior and medial. Keep on noting all these. And there are three surfaces, and which are these three surfaces? Anteromedial, posteromedial and superficial surface. Let us see which is the superficial. This surface which we see from lateral aspect, this is called a superficial surface. This is, that's why also sometimes called as the lateral surface. And in the cross section you can see this, okay, this is that superficial surface or the lateral surface, because here it is the medial border, anterior border and posterior. So between anterior border and posterior border, this is superficial or the lateral surface is there, okay. So these are the surfaces. Now anteromedial and posteromedial surface only can be visualized through this cross section. From anterior border to this medial border, okay, anterior border, and this is anterior, okay, because ramus of mandible is here, okay. Now this is the anteromedial because it is facing anteriorly as well as medially. So this border is anteromedial border. On this side this is the posterior border and this is medial border, and just extending between the posterior border to that of the medial border, this is the posteromedial surface. So just note down posteromedial surface and the anteromedial, and this is the lateral or the superficial surface. So you must have realized by this time that parotid is just the mass of the gland filling the space. Okay, there is no definite, I mean to say, structure or regular structure of the parotid is there. So what I have told you is that it has an apex, okay, which is here, lower down. A base is here towards that, and base is facing here. I will show you first in this bony structure. The base is directed upward, okay, here, and it lies in relation to the external acoustic meatus, tympanic membrane, and the neck of the mandible, and the up to the root of the zygoma here. This is all will form the in relation to the base of, because the gland will fill this space, okay, will fill this space. Okay, now you know the borders, surfaces, apex and base. Okay, 3 borders, 3 surface, apex and base. Now sometime a small part of the gland, okay, let me draw it. A small part of the gland, okay, may get detached from the main mass of the gland, and this may lie here onto the parotid duct superior, this pipe. Okay, just I will draw it here. And this mass of the gland which is lying onto the duct, and this is the parotid duct, which is going deep inside the oral cavity by piercing the buccinator muscle and just at the anterior margin of the masseter muscle. This is masseter, I have said. Okay, anterior, the duct will go. So onto the top of the duct here, lying onto the masseter, is a small mass of the, not always, okay, it is seen sometime, is called as the accessory parotid gland, because it is an accessory gland, not the main mass. Now, what is parotid fascia? What is parotid fascia? Now, this parotid gland, okay, is covered by the deep cervical fascia. At the apex of the gland, the deep cervical fascia will split to enclose the gland. And while it is splitting, there are 2 layers or laminae, a superficial layer and a deep layer. Okay, so this splits into 2. Superficial fascia is attached to that of the zygomatic arch. Okay, it is attached to the above to the zygomatic arch, and it is tough, which is covering from above, and this is called as the parotid seed. Okay, one which is covering to the superficial surface is called as parotid seed, while the deeper layer which is going deep to is quite irregular, and then because the surface anteromedial and posteromedial they are irregular, it is quite thin, and it will cover the deeper structure and will get attached to the tympanic membrane. It will go to the styloid process, okay, and then this is called as the deep layer, and it is thin, and a part of this thin layer which lies between the styloid process and the angle of the mandible, okay, where it is attached, okay, this becomes especially thick and is called as stylomandibular ligament. Okay, now I will show you the 2 layers of this deep fascia which covers the parotid gland. Let us, I have drawn here in this green color. See here, this is the general investing layer. In a cross section you can understand this is a single layer which splits here it in 2. The superficial is quite thick here. Okay, again it unites and become the single layer. So at the anterior margin here and at the posterior margin it becomes a single layer lower down, because it is attached at the margin or the base of the mandible, and here it is attached to that of the mastoid process and superior nuchal line, so it becomes single. But when it comes to cover the parotid gland, here it becomes, it splits to form See here the superficial layer, and it is quite thick, and it is called as parotid seed. As I said, it splits to form the outer thick layer is called as parotid seed here. This is the parotid seed. Let me write parotid seed or the outer layer of the general investing layer of deep fascia. So this is called as parotid seed. Right. But when you will see that this deeper layer which I had shown you in the dotted line here, this is just because it is very thin and it is covering the undersurface of the fascia. It is thick, except at a place where it extends between the styloid process and this angle of the mandible up to the ramus, posterior margin of the ramus. Here, see this place, from the tip of the styloid process to that of the angle, it becomes especially thick, and this part is called as stylomandibular ligament. The rest of the part here is quite thick, deep inside. Okay, it is quite thick. Okay, I hope you have understood what is the parotid fascia. It is nothing but the splitting of the general investing layer of deep fascia to enclose the parotid gland both on superficial and the deep surface. Now let us come to the parotid duct. You can see in the green color I have drawn, this is the parotid duct which is lying or crossing the superficially onto the masseter muscle. Okay, so it is about 5 centimeter long, this parotid duct. Okay, and it crosses the masseter and then it opens in the vestibule of the mouth, oral cavity. Okay, it opens into the opposite to the crown of the upper second molar, that is maxillary, which is attached onto the maxillary alveolar process, and it is to the second molar. In that position it opens onto the vestibule of mouth in the cheek. Okay, it opens. So there the duct opens into the oral cavity. This is the parotid duct, okay, which carries the saliva secretion of the parotid gland to that of the oral cavity. Okay, then once you have understood this general structure of the gland, let us come to the relations. Okay, let us come to the relation of this gland. Okay, where was the apex? Apex is here. Okay, apex is pointed towards the neck. Okay, and this apex is related to the posterior belly of the digastric. Okay, if I try to draw here, this is the common digastric tendon from where the anterior belly will go, right here, and from here the posterior belly will go from common digastric. So see here, I have drawn the posterior belly and it will be covered by the apex. Okay, so this is the which will go towards the mastoid process. Okay, deep, it will deep to the parotid, it will go to the mastoid. This is anterior belly and this is the posterior belly. Let me give you the color of the muscle. Where is the color of the muscle here? This is the posterior belly of the digastric and this is the anterior belly and this is the common tendon. Okay, common digastric tendon between anterior and posterior belly. So this is that posterior belly which will go deep and going right up to the mastoid process. Okay, as we have seen here, this is the digastric attached onto the deeper surface of the mastoid in cross section, and this is the sternomastoid here which is attached on the superficial surface of the mastoid. Okay, so this is the, I mean to say, apex which is related to the posterior belly of the digastric here, right? Let us come to the base, relations of the base. Okay, the base is concave. Okay, as you will see in other diagram also where concavity is better drawn. This is whole thing is the base and it is concave and it is related to the external acoustic membrane. Okay, external acoustic meatus here, which is surrounded by the tympanic membrane here. So it is related to external acoustic meatus and tympanic membrane and posterior aspect of the temporomandibular joint. Okay, TM joint. Let me show you here. Yes, In this diagram, I will show you that the base is related to the external acoustic meatus, margin of the tympanic membrane, and to that of the head of the mandible, where it is the mandibular fossa is there, okay, and the posterior aspect of the TM joint. So here is the location of the base, okay, base. Now, what is the relation of the superficial surface? We have seen that this is the superficial or lateral surface. This whole is the superficial or the lateral surface. And what is its relation? This is covered by the skin. The lateral surface is relationship. It is the skin here. And deep to the skin is the superficial fascia. Okay. So there is a skin. Then there is a superficial fascia, and within the superficial fascia lies the platysma muscle here at this level, okay, and there are the cutaneous nerve, okay, this cutaneous nerve or the great auricular nerve, okay, and there is the cervical branch of the facial nerve also lies, okay, and then deep to it will lie this membrane, that I mean to say deep fascia, that is the investing layer of the deep fascia, where it splits at the posterior border to enclose the parotid gland and again unites to form a single layer. So it is the deep fascia or parotid sheath, to which we have said already, and just within the surface and embedding into the substance there are the parotid group of lymph nodes. See these lymph nodes, okay, so just I will N. So lymph node I have just drawn here. So these are lymph node which are present deep to. So this is how the superficial surface of the parotid gland is related. Let us come to some, I mean to say, other relation. Other relation means for the anteromedian surface. This is the anterior border, this is the medial border, and a surface extending between the two is the anteromedial surface. Okay. Now this anteromedial surface is, I mean to say, in relation to that of the lateral aspect of the TM joint. I have shown you here. This was the TM joint, temporomandibular joint here, and its lateral surface, the gland lies on the lateral surface to cover this joint. You can see here, TM joint is not seen because the gland anteromedial surface is there, and under which lies the TM joint, okay, TM joint. So this is the, I mean to say, anteromedial surface with the lateral aspect lies on the lateral aspect of the TM joint. Okay, this section which is showing the anteromedial surface is from the lower level, that lower level than the TM joint. It is at the level of the ramus and the tip of the mastoid process. Hence, it is not showing that relation, lateral aspect of the TM joint. Another relation is the lateral surface of the masseter muscle. Now this gland lies on the lateral surface of, this is masseter attached onto the ramus of the mandible. This is the ramus of mandible. You can see that the gland is lying onto the part of the masseter muscle here. Okay, that relation I am talking. So the lateral surface, it is related. Which is related? This is the anteromedial surface we are talking. Then it is related to the posterior border of the ramus of the mandible and the medial pterygoid. See this muscle is the medial pterygoid muscle. Yeah, this which is attached onto the medial aspect of the ramus of the mandible just above the angle. And this is related to the medial ramus, medial pterygoid and posterior border of the ramus. I think you can understand from this diagram also. Okay, so we are talking about the anteromedial surface, the TM joint, then this is the masseter attached to the ramus, posterior border of the ramus. They are all in relation, and muscle is masseter here, and on the medial aspect it will be the medial pterygoid muscle here. Okay, just deep to on the medial aspect. They are the also relation of the anteromedial surface. Let us see this. These are the relations, okay, anteromedial surface. Posterior border of the ramus, of course, is related. The whole posterior border of this ramus here, see, that is related to that of the, see here, this is the posterior border of ramus in cross section, which is related, okay. Ramus of the medial terrain. Then stylomandibular ligament extending from styloid process to that of the mandible. I have told you here. See this diagram. In this is the styloid process and this is the mandible. So this ligament, stylomandibular ligament, will also form the relation, stylo. And then the branches of the facial nerve which are emerging close to the anterior border. See, this is the anterior border. This is the anterior border of the gland, and these are the branches. Okay, this is just showing the course of the facial nerve, this, and this is coming out from the anteromedial surface very close to the anterior border, and many branches are given. You can see in this diagram. See, this is the anterior border, okay, and the branches are coming close to the anterior border. See these many branches. This branches is the temporal branch, which is going towards the temporal region, and this is branch is called as the zygomatic branch. This branch is called as the upper buccal, B-U-C-C-A-L. This is called as upper buccal. So naturally this is called as lower buccal. This is the lower buccal branch of facial nerve. This is called as marginal mandibular branch. And the last branch here, which is going to the platysma in the neck, it is called a cervical branch of the facial. So these are the branches of the facial nerve which are coming from just deep to the anterior margin of our anterior border of the parotid gland and going to supply the muscles of the face, okay, because facial nerve is motor here. It is motor here. Okay, so we were on to the, so we have learned the relations of the anteromedial surface. Okay, we have learned the relation of anteromedial surface. Let us go to the relation of the posteromedial surface. The posteromedial extend between the medial border to the posterior border, covered by a thin layer of the fascia, deep cervical fascia, deeper lamina. Okay. Now this is related to the mastoid process. Yes, this is the mastoid process on which the sternocleidomastoid superficially and posterior belly of the digestive, they are attached here. See this sternocleidomastoid muscle, and deeply it will be the posterior belly of the digestive as it will go ascend up. Okay, they are in relation to the posteromedial border. Styloid process and various muscles attached to it. After this, let us see, this is the styloid process cut transversely, and this various muscle attached to it means stylopharyngeus, okay, stylohyoid and styloglossus. These are the muscles which are attached to that of the styloid process, and they are in relation to the posteromedial surface, okay. And the facial nerve, it is entering here. See this on the posteromedial border, the this facial nerve is entering after coming out from stylomastoid foramina, because styloid process is here, mastoid is here, and in between the two is here is the stylomastoid foramina, and then it pierces the posteromedial surface of the gland and then runs in the substance of the gland superficial to these two structure, that is the external carotid artery and the retromandibular vein, and it comes out close to the anterior margin, and then already divide it into the various branches within the substance of the parotid gland. Okay, so the facial nerve emerges out at this surface. Okay, enter in this parotid gland. Then there is internal jugular vein. See this internal jugular vein, it is also related to the posteromedial surface but away from the styloid process and muscle taking origin from it. The internal carotid artery, it is again a relation of the posteromedial surface, and then the wall of the pharynx is related to the medial border, okay, and more towards the posteromedial surface, okay, posteromedial surface. Right, there are the lymph node which are deeply situated, that parotid group of the deep lymph node they are. These are the nerves. This is the vagus nerve between artery and vein, and then there are the 9th, 12th, this is the 12th nerve, hypoglossal, 9th and 11th cranial nerve. They are also related, okay, here. So these are the relationship of the enteromedial and the posteromedial and superficial surface of the gland, Let us come to the anterior border, okay. When we see the anterior border, let us see the anterior border in this. I think it is better to show you from this, though I will keep on referring the other diagrams also. This is the base in this diagram. This is the apex which is close to the neck, posterior inferior to the angle of the mandible. This is the anterior border. This is posterior border, base and apex. Okay. The anterior border is related to many structures. This is the temporal branch of the facial nerve. I have already given the name in the previous diagram. Please you note down. Temporal branch of the facial nerve. Then the transverse facial artery. This is the transverse facial artery. Then zygomatic branch. Then the upper buccal branch. Then the duct. Then the lower buccal branch. Marginal mandibular branch, and then this is the cervical branch. All these are branches from the facial nerve, which has divided into these many branches within the substance of the parotid gland, and they have come out just deep to the anterior margin of the parotid gland, okay, parotid gland. Okay. Then what you will see here in the posterior border, okay, posterior border, this is the posterior auricular nerve, and the posterior auricular vessels. They will be related in the uppermost part of the posterior border. Then there is no relation except near the apex, where the anterior margin and posterior margin, that is anterior border, they are related to the veins, okay, they are related to the veins which are anterior and posterior division of the retromandibular vein. And where was the retromandibular vein? This was deep inside the substance which will divide into anterior and posterior division lower down, okay. So these are the anterior and posterior. Anterior division will unite with the facial vein to form common facial. Posterior division will unite with the posterior auricular to form the external jugular vein. Okay, that we have already learned. Okay. Now the medial border, it is the wall of the pharynx. See, this is the medial border, and this is the wall of the pharynx which is related to the medial border. Now the structures which are traversing the gland within the substance of the gland. Which are the structures which are traversing within the substance of the gland? It is the branches of the facial nerve. I have shown only one nerve here, but it will give so many branches, okay, within the substance. It is the retromandibular vein, and it is the external carotid artery. These are the main structures which will traverse the substance of the parotid gland to come out at the anterior margin. The nerve will come out, the vein will go down, and the artery will go upward and the maxillary artery and the superficial temporal will be given here, okay, just as a terminal branches. Okay, let us come now after relationship to the blood supply. Okay, so I am coming to the blood supply. Okay, I will be quick. Okay, it is getting lengthier. Okay, now the blood supply is from the external carotid and superficial temporal, superior temporal. Okay, so this superficial temporal or external carotid artery, as they are traversing or lying close to that of the parotid gland, they will supply the artery. Arterial blood will come from this to artery. and the veins will drain to the retromandibular vein, which is within the substance of the parotid gland, retromandibular vein, and to the external jugular vein. Okay. Right, the nerve supply. Nerve supply is of three different types of nerves are there. One is the sensory nerve. Sensory nerve means auriculotemporal nerve. Okay, and this is sensory to the parotid fascia. I told you that parotid fascia means the outer layer of the deep investing layer of fascia, which is covering to the superficial surface of the parotid gland, and this is the sensory for this fascia. Okay, and this sensation will go also through the great auricular nerve. Okay, great auricular nerve. So auriculotemporal and the great auricular, which has the root value C2, they are the general sensation, pain, touch and temperature kind of fibers. They will go through these two now, auriculotemporal and great auricular nerve. Second, we come to the secretomotor or parasympathetic, which are the nerve which will lead to the secretion of the parotid, because parotid gland secretion is under the autonomic control, parasympathetic nerve supply. And here if you see the trace, the whole path of this autonomic nerve or parasympathetic, the preganglionic neurons are located in the inferior salivatory nucleus, which is in medulla. Inferior salivatory nuclei will give the axons. Okay, the neurons will give the axon. Okay, which will come out from this as the with the glossopharyngeal nerve. It will form a tympanic plexus in the midbrain, in the middle ear cavity, okay, on the promontory, and these are the fibers which are coming as the preganglionic fiber, because this was the first order neuron. Okay, and this will relay into the otic ganglion, which lies deep to the mandibular nerve just below the foramina ovale. Okay, now this fibers which will come out from tympanic plexus, they come out as a lesser superficial petrosal nerve, and this goes through the foramina ovale and will relay into the otic ganglion. Okay, and here there are collection of the neuron which are the postganglionic neuron, and from here the fibers will go and they will go along with the auriculotemporal branch of the mandibular nerve, and then these fibers will reach to the parotid gland, where they will supply to the parotid gland, and stimulation of this nerve will lead to the secretion from the parotid gland. So otic ganglion is a ganglion where the postganglionic neurons are located, and this is the inferior salivatory nucleus in the brainstem where the preganglionic neurons are situated. So this is how the secretomotor or parasympathetic fibers are located. Third kind of fibers are sympathetic fibers, and these are the postganglionic sympathetic fibers. If we trace it, it is the sympathetic preganglionic neurons are located at the spinal cord segment T1, thoracic 1 segment in the lateral horn, from where the preganglionic fibers will come and they will relay in the superior cervical ganglion. From superior cervical sympathetic ganglion, these fibers then will run on the surface of the external carotid artery, and when external carotid artery lies within the substance of the gland, as we have seen, then these fibers will go to supply the finer blood vessels which are responsible for the blood supply, and its function is to act as a vasoconstrictor. That means the tunica media of these blood vessels which are supplying to parotid gland will be controlled by these sympathetic fibers. Okay, sympathetic. So there are three types of nerve supply: sensory, secretomotor, and vasoconstrictor fibers. Okay, let us come very quickly to the applied importance of the parotid gland. Mumps. Okay, many of you must have suffered in your childhood mumps, which is the swelling just below the ear, okay, on your cheek, that is on the surface of the masseter. Okay, that is it is the swelling of the parotid gland, and this is due to the viral infection, a very painful condition, and the swelling is seen here. Many children, they suffer in the now this mumps become painful because there is no space for the swelling of the parotid gland to expand, because it is covered by the tough fascia, general investing layer, superior face layer, I mean to say superficial layer, which is called as parotid sheath, and a deep layer, though it is, I mean to say, not very tough, okay, it is delicate, but at such, in the parotid region, the bony area is such that there is no room to expand, and that is the reason why it is mumps are painful, and they are the viral infection. Now, sometime when the infection reaches to the parotid gland, there may be the pus may be collected, okay, pus formation, what is called as parotid abscess. Now there may be two sources why the infection will go deep inside the parotid gland. One is that the bacteria may go through the opening of the parotid duct in the oral cavity, okay, or it may come through the blood vessels, that is the blood borne, okay, or directly through this parotid duct, and this bacteria may cause the problem or formation of pus within the parotid gland. This is called as parotid abscess. A surgeon should be careful while he is just giving a cut to drain out the pus. To drain out the pus from the parotid gland, his incisions should be along the parallel to the direction of the branches, okay, that is horizontally mostly, okay, he should be careful, okay, while you are giving the incision from skin right up to the parotid gland. Now if you will give a vertical incision, let me use this diagram to tell you. If you use the vertical incision, then all these branches will cut, okay. If you are giving a vertical, so many branches are coming horizontally, okay, and this you are going to cut the branches of the facial nerve, which will lead to the facial paralysis. All the muscles of the face, okay, which are supplied by these cut branches, they will get paralyzed. Last applied importance is the parotid tumors. Now tumor is a formation of the lump, and this may be of two types, cancerous and non-cancerous. Okay, if it is a non-cancerous, mostly it is superficial to the branches of this facial nerve, and sometimes all the mass of the parotid gland which lies superficial to the branches of the parotid gland, facial nerve, is called as the superficial lobe. Excuse me. So this is that is non-cancerous swellings. They are usually seen in the superficial lobe, and whatsoever mass of the parotid gland lies deep to these branches of the facial nerve is called as the deep lobe, and the real cancer takes place deep to these nerves, okay, in the deep lobe, which are deep to the nerves. Thank you very much for watching this video, though it become a little lengthier, but I have covered the many aspects of the parotid gland, and it is a complete answer for the long question. Thank you.